The layers palette in Photoshop is similar to the layers palette in all of the Adobe programs in many ways, but it has a few more tools and gizmos with it, make it a little bit more complex. So we're going to, in a course of several videos, take a look at all the tools of the layers palette. As always, we can either go over to the right side, and generally most of our palettes are listed here with these little icons. And here's the layers palette. Looks like a little stack of pieces of paper. Or if it's not visible there, we can go up under Window in the main menu, and we can bring up the layers. And the layers palette always works in one basic manner, and that is, it's like having a stack of a deck of cards, all of them made out of pieces of acetate, and we can put things on different layers and isolate them and treat them differently. As a matter of fact, in Photoshop, almost everything automatically gets put on its own layer. So let's take a look at that. And the first thing, I went ahead, as you can see, and opened up the Dune. And the first thing is that there are really kind of two different kinds of layers. I call them regular layers, and then there are background layers. Now, and they do have some differences. Every image starts out as a background layer. As you can see here, it's automatically labeled a background layer. But a background layer is more limited than a standard or typical layer. And notice that everything at the top of the layers palette right now is grayed out. And that is indicative of the fact that the background layer is somewhat limited because everything on it is locked. Okay? So, we can convert it into a regular layer very easily. And in this case, what I always do is just double click on the word background, the name given to it at this point. And I'll just double click that, and it brings up the layer properties dialog box. And here we can name or change the name of a layer. It will automatically be called layer 0. And also here in the layer properties dialog box, which we can always come back to, we can color code our layers, and that's done from this dialog box as well. Okay, so I'm going to start right out by picking a color. Color coding helps us organize things, and that works out very nicely. So there I have my layer, and I've converted it into a standard layer, and now notice everything up here has been lit up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up another image, Command O, and I'm going to open up, go to the samples folder, and I'm going to open up the old duck. There he is. I'm going to pull him aside here. Go to my first tool, my move tool, and I'm going to click on the duck and drag him over here. There you see. He's now on top of, and then I'll close the original. And now notice that the duck, of course, is here in front of the dune. And notice that the duck is now a new layer. Automatically a new layer. And one of the things that we can talk about while we're here is how do you change the name of a layer? The easiest way is to actually click on the word layer, double click, and like any file, I can simply rename it from there. Okay. Another way is to select the layer, and you can always go to the upper right hand corner of this palette, you see, and the little options button gives us options, which includes a new layer, deleting a layer, a number of different things. Here's the layer properties. Here's the layer properties. You see, brings that back up, and we can change the name from here. Once again, remind you, this is where we can pick color coding for these things as well. Okay, so I can the easiest, as again, is to just double click it right here, Also, we can, by the way, we can right click. We can right click. Alright, so again, I just went to the layer, I right clicked my mouse, and layer properties is the first thing there. We'll call it duck. So, as always, there are a number of different ways that we can accomplish things. The next thing I'm going to do is get the magic wand. I'm going to click on the white area of the duck. I picked the duck layer. And we'll delete that. And then deselect it, Command D. Okay. Then I'm going to make the duck a little bit smaller, and I'm going to go to my Move tool. And up in the main menu in our Options bar, this Options bar that runs across underneath the main menu, always, as with all the Adobe programs, remember we have the Options bar, which changes depending on what tool you're using, because the things in the options affect how the tools behave. So with the Move tool, I'll turn on the transformation tools right here. Bingo. Click that. Gives me the basic transform tools I'll hold the Shift key and make the duck a little bit smaller. I can rotate the duck and do my basic transformations from here, and then click my return key or enter key to acknowledge it, and there I have my duck. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the things at the top of the layers palette. First thing we have is I'm going to look at the locking devices from right to left. From right to left, these 4 locking devices. The first one lets me completely lock the layer. I can't move it. I can't paint on it. I can't do anything to it when it's fully locked. By clicking the tool again, I can unlock it. Okay. The next thing is, notice it looks like the Move tool, the 4-way arrow tool. So if I do this tool or this lock, you see I can't move the duck. Can't move the duck. Okay. But I could, for instance, I can paint on it. It'll let me do that, but I can't move it. Okay. Click it and undo that one. The third one, as you can see here, looks like the paintbrush. And that's because it's going to prevent me or lock me out of being able to paint that layer. And so I'll click this one. Notice that I can move the duck, but as soon as I try to paint on it, it's going to prevent me from doing that. Okay. And the last one is the little checkerboard, and generally you may be aware that when the background is clear, not white or any other color, because remember white is technically a color, when it's completely transparent and clear, quite often what you'll see is the checkerboard, which shows you that the background is clear. And that can be turned on and off under the preferences in the main menu. But you can see there that 4th little lock looks like the checkerboard. And what that means is that when I try to paint, notice that the paint covers the image, but I cannot paint in any of this area around the image. It's not going to let me do that. When it's not locked, then I can paint anywhere on the canvas. Okay? And so that's what that one does. And also we can make the layers visible and invisible. Notice, of course, the dune disappeared momentarily because I turned off the eyeball, which makes each of your layers invisible. Okay? And last couple of things is that we can change the stacking order of our layers, and we can do that simply by just clicking, holding the mouse, and dragging the layer. Now you may think the duck has disappeared, but that's not true. It simply is behind the dune layer. The things that are at the top of the layers palette are the things that are in front. And as you go down layers, they go further and further back. So by turning off this dune layer, there you can see that the duck is simply behind it. And I can bring the duck back to the front by just clicking on it and dragging it up top. And there you have it. Okay. The other thing, a couple of other things I want to point out is we have opacity, and we have our standard opacity where you can make images more transparent. And so by clicking on that and then moving the slider, you can see that I can change the transparency level, in this case, of the duck in front of the dune. Okay. Down below here, we have another kind of transparency that in many cases, like with the duck here, works the same. It seems to be no different than the standard opacity. But in some cases, this is the tool you specifically have to use to adjust the transparency level when you have color fills on certain objects. And so there we have that, but in many cases it works like the standard opacity does. The last thing that I want to show you at the moment is this group of filters right here, and this is something that you'll see again and again in many different places throughout Photoshop. And all of these filters affect how the pixels, in this case between the duck and the dune, intermingle. And there are too many to really tell you how each one works. You just need to try them out, and you will see that you get a variety of different effects of how the images are interacting with each other. And very, very powerful. And you should experiment with these and try them out as well. And that pretty much covers the basics of the layers palette. We're going to come back and look at the tools at the bottom in subsequent layers videos.